Welcome everyone to this week's edition of the Louisville Real Estate Investor Meetup Group. For those of you guys who are new to the group, we actually started this back, I want to say, in early 2019, and since then we've kind of grown pretty significantly. So it's been pretty awesome. Obviously, COVID kind of put a damper on the in-person meeting, but we've been able to kind of leverage our ability to reach out to people across the country to come in and talk about unique concepts. And today's no different. I mean, we have Ashely Kehr, who's the co-host of the BiggerPockets Rookie Podcast, here with us today. We're really excited to host you today. So really thank you again, Ashely, for agreeing to stop by.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, and you've done so much just in your relatively short period of time, and obviously giving back through the podcast has been really helpful. And I know a lot of people in our group listen to your podcast pretty regularly, so I know a lot of people are excited, especially for the Q&A section.
Yeah, well, thank you guys so much for listening.
Of course. So when we first start off these events, we kind of want to get we kind of like to get an idea of a little bit about the person that and their background. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you into real estate investing in the first place.
Yeah, sure. So I graduated college with an accounting and finance degree, and I started working at a CPA firm. Was going to become a CPA, and I hated it. I started in September full time, and I quit mid tax season in February. And I told my husband I will get pregnant and I'll be a stay-at-home mom. And he said, "Okay, go ahead, quit your job." So I was just going to do that. And then my friend's dad had a 40-unit apartment complex and he needed someone to manage it. So I agreed that I would manage it and learn how to do that just part-time. And then that slowly grew into a full-time position with him where I was managing at one point 80 residential units and about 12 commercial units. I was managing dealership buildings. I was doing new development patio homes, a 40,000 square foot dealership building. And so just the experience of everything that he kind of let me be a part of, like he purchased a dealership and he let me be there at the attorney's office at the closing table, and he let me write out the checks for him to purchase this dealership in cash. And I was just like shaking, like I've never written a check this big. And he was just really great about involving me into opportunities. And I think that really helped me really see what the power of real estate can do. And a big thing with him was he would take equity from his rental properties, and he would use that to purchase other businesses. So that to me was really eye-opening as to a really powerful tool as to how he was able to build and scale.
That's awesome. So did he purchase the real estate at the dealership, or did he purchase the business itself as well?
He did both. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's a super unique experience.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
definitely. And then the one that he purchased is actually, we stayed in that building for 2 years and then actually did a new development, a new build on it.
That's so cool. That's such a
Yeah.
unique experience. So, as you were managing the property itself, these properties itself, when did you decide to dive into the residential side of real estate? Was it just more of something that you thought, now this is something that I'd like to do, and you kind of dove in that way, or?
Yeah, so I thought, well, first of all, I thought it would be easier, like getting into a single family duplex. And I looked at, his complex and was like, okay, I want more under one roof. And I wanted to try to mirror what he was doing. So I was like, okay, duplex, that's a great starting point. And I actually reached out to his son, who's working in the dealership industry along with him, but didn't have any investments. And I knew he had a large amount of savings, and he was willing to partner with me on the first deal because he saw how much I had helped his dad and make his real estate investments even better by managing them. And so we partnered on a duplex together, and from there it just kind of snowballed. We did probably 4 deals together before I found another partner, and then I was partnering with both partners, and then I partnered with my sister, and I was also doing some deals on my own too with my husband.
Awesome. And where was this located primarily? Is it Buffalo? I think you were. Is that where
Yeah,
originally?
so like the south towns of Buffalo, I have 2 duplexes that are actually like within the city limits, but the rest are very rural. I live on a dairy farm, so the properties are scattered among. They're in little towns in the country, I guess.
No, that makes sense. That's
Yeah.
awesome though. And starting local for sure is something that, a lot of people start off with because it is something you're a little bit more comfortable with. You understand the area, et cetera. So that is a smart way to do it for sure. So one of the things that I noticed, and maybe this is more recent than anything, is that you've started to consider investing out of state, if I'm not mistaken. So
Yes.
that's awesome because I saw some of your videos actually about related to that topic. So what made you decide to, pull the trigger as far as getting out of, the Northeast?
Yeah, so with New York State, they actually changed the landlord laws. So it went from like a 10-day notice to a 3-day notice, and or I'm sorry, for 3-day to 10-day, and just it became a lot more tenant friendly. And then now with COVID, like the evictions, like you're never gonna have another eviction. It seems like, but so it's just, and the property taxes are really high too. So, for example, for a duplex I bought for $17,500, I put maybe $8,000 into it over the years, and it's renting for $1,200 a month. It that's all I put into it, and the property taxes on that are almost $5,000 a year. So the way I look at it is like I would rather go to another market, pay 60,000 up front, pay a smaller amount of property taxes, because once I get that 60,000 paid off, like that's less money out of pocket every year. But those property taxes in New York State are always going to be here. So it's like a lower fee of entry. Like you can get into a deal a lot easier because the purchase price is so low, but those expenses really weigh heavy, especially having to keep paying them, and property taxes just keep increasing. So
Definitely.
that was
So
my
go
big
ahead. I'm sorry.
motivation to go out of state.
Oh, for sure. No, that's a great determination. Obviously, there's the cool thing about this group, especially since COVID, is that we've been able to have people from all over the country kind of tune
Yeah.
in. So everyone has their own unique perspectives on why their state may be better than others, and so it's kind of interesting to hear your take on the Buffalo market. So now, and you kind of alluded to this in your first talking point, but I guess what are some of the things to consider as you're analyzing a market? You alluded to maybe the tenant laws. Property taxes could be a big thing. What other things do you think made your determination? Because I know you were looking at was it the Houston market that you were
Yeah,
looking
so
at?
really the only reason I started looking at Houston was because of Steve Rosenberg.
Mm-hmm.
So him and I became really good friends, and he was like, I have every single thing you need and I can walk you through it. And that's where we started to do the YouTube videos, just kind of recreating my whole experience of how someone, does investing out of state. So he actually can help you, and he teaches you how to do it without actually like having to go there. But I'd been stuck in COVID and I wanted to travel, and this is a great excuse. So I hopped on a plane. I went to Houston, and we spent like 3 days where I met with everybody you need on your team to do an out of state deal. So we met with a lender. So this lender did, hard money conventional loans. So I could buy a burr with hard money, and then they would roll it into a conventional loan for me. I met a realtor who took us around and showed us houses. I met a wholesaler who had houses available to us to show when we talked about their process. I had a maintenance guy, a handyman who could do rehabs, remodels, and also do tenant maintenance if I were to get a property there. Then I also had, I met with 2 property management companies too. And then just Steve's knowledge of like knowing the market and comparing that to what all these other professionals had said were the areas that we looked in when I was there.
Okay, and I'm assuming a lot of it had to do with because I watched some of the videos, so a lot of it had to do with the area of town, the size of the property, because maybe some larger properties are probably a little bit less favorable to rent out than maybe somewhere in that 1,200 to 1,500 square foot range. Is that kind of what your logic was as you were walking through that process?
Yeah, and it was interesting kind of working with Steve because we created at the time we were doing our own like free mastermind group together. And we thought to ourselves like, okay, what do you need when you analyze a market? And we each made a list, and they were completely different. And it was so awesome to like combine our lists so that like there was different things. So mine was more of, I guess, numbers, like, okay, what are the property tax percentage? His was more like, what's the job growth? So I just pulled up our list real quick. And so we made this spreadsheet where it's like, okay, what are the job industries? And you want at least 3 of them. Okay, so you don't want to go into a town where you're depending on one job or one factory, where if that factory shuts down, you're going to lose all of your renters. So then there's population growth. What's the average home value? What's the average rent? What's the price to rent ratio? The tax assessment percentage. And then utilities. Is there anything unique with utilities? Like, do you want to get into septics, or do you want to stay along, with public sewers? Does it need a well? Does it have uh, city water? Maintenance. So I live in Buffalo. We have snow. When I bought my very first property, when I ran the numbers, I forgot to put in there to allot for snow plowing. And that's like something so obvious. But yeah, that was like one of my mistakes on my first properties that made my cash flow not as great as I thought it was going to be. But, look at that too. What are some of the, like, is there going to be a hurricane? Do you have to put specialty insurance on the property for flooding or anything like that? And then just the average age of renters, the average income of renters, the average education level, the percentage of homeowners versus percentage of renters, the crime statistics, school district rating, average age of properties. Do you want to have your focus more towards new builds, or are you going to be looking for like really old distressed properties that you're going to be fixing up? And then average vacancy rate in the area for other landlords. And you can call property management companies and get this information. You can look it up. And then just having multiple exit strategies. So if you purchase a property in this area, are you going to be able to rent it? If you needed to, could you flip it? Could you do it as an Airbnb? Do you have more than one option of this property in case the one that you pick isn't working? So those are like the main criteria that we look at when analyzing a deal in another city.
Awesome. That's some great advice. I mean, and again, I mean, and this is something that I think, and I've never invested out of state, so I'm more speaking from a perspective of this is something that I would be concerned with as I'm looking outside of my state, essentially. So I guess one of the other questions that I wanted to ask you, and this is kind of related to the management aspect of things. How has it been, and this is more on your front, how has it been kind of letting go of some of that control? Because I imagine when you're local, it's a lot easier. For example, I have a fourplex 15 minutes away, so if I needed to do something, I could just drive down the street and go address it. But in a case where you're investing somewhere outside of state, you kind of have to let go of some of the reins a bit and allow the team that you've developed to really take the reins there. How was that transition for you? And was it relatively seamless since you already had a connection with Steve?
Well, I actually have my first out-of-state rental under contract right now, so I haven't even officially closed on it, and it's actually not even Houston. I actually moved to California, and I'm buying in Joshua Tree. So it's kind of like a big turn of events, and it's going to be a short-term rental and not a long-term rental. So, but this property, I am giving up so much control, and so I started working for this investor. I was the only person managing those properties, doing everything except for the maintenance. I did the leasing, I collected the rent, everything for years. And then I did the same for my own. So last February, so a year ago, I actually turned over his properties and my properties to a property manager. And that was like so hard for me to do that. And I feel like it's taken a year for both of us to even get on the same page as to like get into a good system of how they do things and how I can like handle that and stuff like that. So it was definitely very hard to get used to, but definitely good practice for doing out of state. So with my current deal out of state, I'm actually doing a joint venture where the partner is 51%. They're managing the property. They have control of everything, and I'll own 75% of the actual property, and I'll get 75 for the cash flow. I'll be responsible 75 for the expense if something happens. But our joint venture agreement for actual like managing the property, they have 51% control of that. And that was definitely a huge change for me. And then with buying out of state, so in California, you don't need attorneys. You can use a title company. Where in New York, you have to use an attorney to close. And so today, or actually yesterday, I got my title documents sent to me and I open it up. I'm like, I am not sure if I'm reading this right because I've literally not looked at one for all the deals that I've done. My attorney handles that and just like, oh, just, there's this issue, but I'm doing this with it. It's taken care of. And I've never actually looked at title documents before because they take care of that. So that was like a big change for me. So I still sent it to my attorney to look at, but then I sent it to my partner and I said, look at this. It looks like, they have some back taxes, and let's just go through this real quick. But there's definitely been a lot of changes for that. And then I used a bank in California. None of the banks that I use here in New York lend in California. And I actually had done a deal with a bank in California before that had lended nationwide. So I was pretty used to like doing everything electronically and having a notary come to my house and sign and stuff. So that wasn't the lending side of it wasn't a huge change for me, but actual purchasing of the property has been very different than what I'm used to.
Sure. So as far as your experience goes, would you recommend, and this is something that I'm just curious about, would you recommend having someone on site that you can maybe partner with as you purchase a property out of state? So let's say I have a friend that I went to college with in Ohio or Arkansas, actually Paul, who's a buddy of mine from high school. Let's just say that he's local, he finds a property, and all of a sudden he says, oh, we should buy this property. Do you think it's a good idea to, consider doing something like that where you can at least have some boots on the ground with people that you trust?
Yeah, so he lives maybe somewhat close, like an hour, maybe 2 hours from it. So it's not like he's super close to the property. And honestly, I would have invested, but he also invests in the Smoky Mountains too and other places. So I honestly would have done any of those markets. This is just where the deal that I liked came up in that market. So I think it's more about them having experience of what they're doing than them actually being boots on the ground in the market. I think is more important that they've done this before. They've either been in this market or they've invested out of state and been hands off. So I think that's better than actually having someone there. One thing we do have is we have a cleaner there that manages their other properties and will take care of this. So that's like, especially for a short-term rental, that's very important, is having a good cleaner in place who will, let you know if there are problems. Will be checking in on the property every turnover, making it nice. And that's kind of like your set of eyes on the property is your cleaner when you're doing the turnovers.
Okay. Awesome. All right. So I guess lastly, just for the preset questions, because I wanted to kind of open it up to the rest of the group, just because we do like to have it a little bit more open discussion, just because obviously we want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to kind of provide or ask questions that they'd like. What are some of the best resources, in particular for those who are interested in investing out of state? I know we obviously BiggerPockets has a book on the subject, but do you have anything else that you found helpful as you were going through the process of acquiring your California property?
So honestly, like interviewing people on the podcast who have done out of state investing and just really connecting and networking with people who do that, and just like how it's become so easy breezy for them. And you get to the mindset, it's like, well, if they can do that, I can do that too. And especially with put systems in place. Like if you're investing now in your hometown and you're the boots on the ground and stuff, put as many systems in place as you can so that it feels like you're not there. Like I don't drive by my properties. I don't do anything really for my properties. Like if there's an issue, the maintenance guy is sent out, the property manager is contacted. I don't have to do anything. One big change for me would be rehab. So I haven't done an out-of-state rehab yet, and for the rehab that I'm doing now, I have a contractor that I trust and love. He actually built my house, but I still like stop in just because I'm like curious. But I don't know anybody out of state that I would trust as much as I trust him. So that's where, for me personally, I would be a little worried about doing like a full rehab and not being hands on. So I'd really have to work on getting comfortable with that, I guess. But as far as like if I just bought a rental property that's already rented or turnkey or ready to go, or didn't, had very small maintenance, I would be a lot more comfortable doing that. Or if another investor, and that's where networking comes in, if they connect you, and like referrals are like the biggest thing to me. If you, especially if you have multiple people referring this person to you, I'm definitely more comfortable with doing that, whatever I need to get done.
Awesome. And then one last question I have, just out of curiosity, as you've been going through this process, have you been, I guess, documenting things so that you can start building systems as you start to scale? Because I'm assuming this isn't going to be your first outstate investment. Is that correct?
Yeah. So like, actually with this one though, we are documenting it because we just want to show like when you do like how a joint venture works and how it works with partnering someone and what it looks like behind the scenes, ordering furniture and everything for a short-term rental. But I have to say, like the way that my partner has it set up, like it's pretty passive to the person that invests with them. So I'm not even having the biggest thing that's on me is just like filling out the mortgage documents and getting the closing and that stuff done, where they have an awesome system that we did like a recording of that where they show me their checklist and their process is like, okay, we have a property under contract. This is everything that gets done. They have 3 people on their team. These are the people that do it. And they offer, if you want to take on some of it, go ahead. And I'm like, no, please do not give me more work, but I just like to follow along and I like to learn the process of all that.
That's awesome. Well, that's some great advice. So I guess what we'll go ahead and do now is I wanted to kind of open it up to the rest of the audience. I will be checking Facebook as well for those of you guys who are tuning in on Facebook. So if you guys have any questions in particular, feel free to chime away.
Hey, Ashely, this is Jake. First of all, it's cool to see you on here. You mentioned systems. I remember first following you on Instagram when you would do those handwritten slides and going through. I was just getting started at that time, and I thought that was super helpful. So thank you, and also love to see more of that.
Yeah, I upgraded from a regular whiteboard handwriting to now I use my iPad
works.
and Apple Pencil.
It works. Just the basic. Hey, this is not too big to understand, especially for those getting started. And then, who knows? Maybe that's why my BiggerPockets saw you as a great option for the Rookie Podcast. But I guess on that too, just it's cool to see your journey and growth from going to BiggerPockets to now investing out of state. Also love when you throw your kids on the stories. I think it's a great example of like bringing work into life and vice versa. So there's that. But
thank you very much. I appreciate that.
I think question wise, for those getting started or maybe kind of on that second step, third step, what advice would you give for how do you propel yourself? I know you it was maybe today or yesterday you talked about BiggerPockets. I'm sure most of the people on here are on BiggerPockets, but how do you use that? How do you overcome some of those fears? Like, what are those steps that you took to really now get to the point where you're investing out of state?
Yeah, so like I started out with my partner and he was like my security blanket. Like I knew if something bad happened, we were in it together. Like he had money, his dad had money, would help us. And so that like really helped me get through the first 3 deals. We did the first 3 deals together. Then we were still looking for more. And then I was like, you know what? I want to do something on my own. And my husband and I actually bought a property. And I was actually going to do it with my partner, but he didn't get pre-approved. We were going to buy it together with conventional money, and he was not approved. So I had to take my husband on with me, and it was a 20% down payment, and we scrambled. This was my first time ever going through the loan process. And I had bought the other properties in cash. And so I think the fact that I put myself in a position where I didn't have a choice, because it was such a competitive market that we were going into, and our realtor kind of led us there and was like, you have to get into this area. We love the house. And to make our offer more competitive, we put down 10 grand as, the earnest money. So like if we didn't get this loan or, we didn't close, like we lost that 10 grand. So as soon as the loan officer said, like, I'm sorry, like your partner's not approved. And he said, for me, you don't make enough income. So that's where I brought my husband in. I'm like, you have to do this with me. And he's just, okay, whatever. And so then it became like, we have to come up with our own money for this. And, we pulled money from everywhere for this down payment. And I think that like the rush of it, not like the adrenaline rush, but like the rush of getting everything organized and getting everything together and going through the process so fast, I think just put so much pressure on me and I just knew I didn't have a choice. So I'm not saying put yourself in circumstances where you don't have an option and you have to get things done, but I think getting into that mindset of, you know what, I'm doing this, I'm going for it, I have to get it done, I don't have a choice. And I did not want to lose that 10 grand. And, you know, we ended up closing and ends up being one of our, you know, best cash flowing properties. So I'm glad that I made it work. And then after that, going forward, I took on another partner who had some investments on his own, and we were both kind of stuck. Like, I had spent our money on that down payment. My other investor, I was a little worried about, like, okay, he can't even get approved for a loan. Like, yes, he has savings and stuff, but so I felt stuck. So that's when I found another partner, and he kind of was in the same boat, and we decided, okay, let's just go and look at properties and go to a bank. And we actually went to a bank, and this is where asking for anything just makes sense. So we went to the bank and we said, you know, we want to buy this property. You know, we're not sure how we're going to buy it yet, but if, you know, we want to come back and refinance it, you know, what would that look like? And this was a commercial lender, and it was one I had a relationship with because I had put a portfolio loan on 2 properties with my other partner. The investor I was working for, I did all of his loans through this guy. And the guy said, you know what? We actually have a 90-day unsecured loan, and I'll give it to you guys, and you guys, I'll give it to whatever you guys need to purchase this property. And then you guys just come and we'll put long-term financing on it, and you can pay off that 90-day loan. So we like left there with our jaws on the ground, like, what? This is like something you can do? And so we got that 90-day unsecured loan. On closing day, the bank wrote us a check for the exact amount we needed to close. And then we turned around and we started the process. I think our appraisal was a week after we closed. We got tenants in, and then we got our long-term financing. So really, like, ask around and go to banks and ask what options they have, because you will be surprised. Like, target the small local banks, the credit unions, and then look for seller financing too. That was how I bought my biggest deal. It was from an investor that just wanted out of it. And I bought, I think, like 15 units from him. And he did seller financing for half of them. And that was, I never could have done that deal without it. And I asked him for that. I said, would you be open to doing this? So I think partnering, asking banks what kind of loan options they have, and then also seller financing is a way that you can really you know, propel yourself and if you're stuck and you don't know where to go, you can use those kinds of financing to get more properties under your belt.
That's awesome. Just the examples behind, you know, some of those things you hear a lot: partnership, make the ask, put yourself on the hook, even if that's a big EMD. But no, that's awesome. It's, I guess, secondly, on my end, you've obviously utilized partnerships very well to help you do those things that maybe you were scared to do, or just kind of the next step in learning. What do you look for in a partner? I mean, obviously it's what you don't have, but you know, how have you vetted these different people? Are they people you know? What does that intro to those relationships look like to make sure it's something that's a good fit for you?
Yeah, so my first partner, we grew up right next door to each other, so we knew each other since we were 2. So that was like, I grew up with his family. I knew him very well, and I knew anything bad happened, like his parents would bail him out and like help me over him. So I think like we had that long-term relationship, and we trusted each other. And the fact that he said, hey, I'll give you $75,000 to purchase this house, and you take care of everything, like, showed that he trusts me so much. And then you know, it has worked out really well. We've had like our ups and downs, but I think a really important thing is having a friendship or having some kind of interaction before you actually go into that first deal, because you're going to learn like how you work together, like how you solve problems together. When you get into arguments or disagreements, you would rather those be about like personal problems or your friendship before you get into business, and then you can learn how to work through them. So I don't want to say you want to learn how to handle each other. That doesn't sound right, but like, you know how the person would react to something, and you know how to say it to make sure that they don't react that way, or you know, they know how to do the same for you, or if there's something they don't even want to know about or take care of, you know that that's just something you dive in because it will ruin their day, and then you just tell them, you know, when the solution is done. So I think really knowing like disc profile, like finding out how they are, how to talk to them is a huge thing. Then for my second partner, we had been friends for maybe a year before we did our first deal, and he was actually dating my partner's sister. So it's kind of like a weird circle there, but and now they're married. But he had spent a lot of time, his wife now, so her dad was who I was working for. They would come into my office and they wanted to learn more and more about property management. So they spent a lot of late nights with me learning the processes. So the fact that they took that time and were intentional about learning all this stuff, like I wanted to invest with him, and that made me comfortable, and we got along well. And then my other two partners are my brother and sister. And my brother, like, we just have one property together where it's very easy, and he doesn't have to do anything, and I just take care of everything, and he doesn't care. And then my sister is probably like the worst partnership. She lives in the property, and just like she has very high expectations, and so I would say that was like the most difficult was with my sister. We butt heads a lot. She's doing a house hack, and we partnered on that. And then with my newest partner, it's actually my co-host Tony. So I think the fact that we can't mess up our partnership because we have so much on the line with being co-hosts, and I think that really helps hold each other accountable. Like, I can't not follow through this, or I can't not get something done, in the same with him, because that will affect our show, and we want nothing to happen to that. So I think it will bring us better, and I think make us better co-hosts because we're partnering on a deal and we're showing that we trust each other. And so those are my partners, I guess. But yeah, just knowing them before you actually jump into a deal, I think, is important.
That's super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Awesome. Yeah, and leading by example, like you said. I mean, you guys are obviously you're in a unique position to kind of influence those around you, and so being able to show that is pretty powerful. So that's awesome. So we actually have a question from Jeff. Hey, Jeff. He said, "How did you figure out the elements of the joint venture contract?"
So that I don't have a good answer for you, because that Tony supplied to me. He gave that to me, and then I just gave it to my attorney, and she looked through it. So it was something he already had together that he's used. But basically, they told me, okay, like, how much money do you want to put towards the down payment, and how much do you feel comfortable being the owner, like having the percentage in? And then they kind of threw out an offer, and I was fine with that. But I like it because it's very specific. Like, okay, these are the management fees. This is what happens if we sell the property. This is what happens, if we don't have any renters in there who's paying the expenses. Like, the first couple months, all the cash flow is going towards reserves, or it's very specific, which I like. And it's very not what happens now, but also what happens in the future, which I do that too with all of my partnerships, is make sure it outlines what you're having going on now. So, like, for example, if like I'm managing the property and my partner is taking care of maintenance, like, okay, yeah, that's fine and dandy right now, but 2 years later, you're both going to want to do that. And what happens then? So I would suggest like putting into your contract, like, and I talked to this about them because they're doing the management right now. What happens if you don't want to do that anymore? And you're charging me this amount, but what happens if someone else comes in and they charge double that? And I wasn't expecting that because we agreed on this amount. So have an addendum or attachment or something that says like, okay, if we hire this out, like, this would be the fee that we would pay, and this is where it'll come from, blah, blah, blah. Just put as much like detail and like kind of project the future of what you think would happen. And I also do life insurance policies. So on my partners, I have life insurance policies. So if I were to pass away, the life insurance policy would kick in. It would be paid to my partner, and he would use that cash to pay off my family for my ownership of the company. So that way, he's full owner. He doesn't have to worry about partnering with my family, making decisions with my husband. And then my husband doesn't have to, manage a rental portfolio. He can just take his lump sum cash and take the kids to Hawaii or whatever. But I also think that's very important too. I mean, unless you are comfortable being partners with, their spouse, their kids, whoever. But that's also something I like to suggest when you're partnering.
That's actually a great point, the life insurance policy, because again, you don't know. I mean, especially if you start scaling and you have a lot of everything's webbed together and something were to happen, I mean, that may be a sizable outflow of cash that your partner may or may not have. And then it just, can kind of.
Right. And then you don't have to worry about it. Like, okay, if something happened to my partner, I need to have this much money saved so that I can buy his family out. So I don't have to, be their partner and make decisions with them. Like the life insurance policy is in place and that will kick in. So.
Oh, that's some great advice. And then kind of a follow-up, Jeff was just asking do you have signed contracts with all your partners, including your family members?
The only one I don't have is with my sister that's living in the property. So the way that one worked real quick was she graduated college, wanted to buy a duplex and house hack, but she didn't have the money for a down payment. So I gifted her the funds and she got an FHA loan. She's living in a really great market where I wouldn't have been able to get into that market unless I gave a 20% down payment or paid all cash for the property. So she was able to only put 3.5% down. So I gifted her that 3.5% down. On the deed, we're 50-50 on the deed, but then the mortgage, it's only in her name. So my debt to income ratio isn't hurt at all because I don't even have that mortgage associated with me. So right now she rents out the downstairs. She lives in the upstairs. She's been doing like small cosmetic updates to the property. And right now I get nothing from the property, but it's in the 2.5 years she's lived there, it's probably already appreciated $20,000, $30,000 because it's in such a hot area. But then when she moves out, I'll get 50% of the cash flow from when someone moves into there. So if I could do it different, I probably would have laid out the terms more. Like, okay, if you live here for 5 years, if not, then you're paying me cash flow, or, what exactly happens when you sell the house? Like, am I getting my $14,000 back plus 50% of the profit, or are we just splitting whatever the sale proceeds are? So I definitely would have outlined that more. Not that worried about it because it is my sister and I know that we're not going to like try to, ruin each other or anything, but she's the only one that I don't have an official contract with.
That makes sense. And I'll agree on that as far as the partnership goes. I mean, hashing that out on the front end, it probably won't happen, obviously, especially if you have a strong relationship with someone, but you never know. You just don't want to get to a point where you find yourself in that predicament and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, how do we go from here? And then it could potentially go to litigation, and you'd never want that to be the case. So
yeah,
that's awesome. Okay, so I think Jeff also had one more question, was related to commercial lending. So did the commercial lender require you your property to be an LLC?
Yes, but we were already partners and we already had actually no, it was our first one for an LLC, but yes, we did already have it planned to be in an LLC. Yeah. And then what we did with that property, so when we actually refinanced it with that same bank, they actually gave us a 25-year fixed residential loan, even with the LLC. And that's the first bank I've ever found to do that. And so we went along and did that we didn't even refinance on the commercial side. We had just done the unsecured loan on the commercial side. But the interest rate, so that was in 2017, I think, and the interest rate on that was 7.35%. And like on the commercial side, you were getting like 5% maybe at that time, 4.5% or something like that. So it was like a higher interest rate, but you were getting it fixed for 25 years. And we didn't want to we weren't ready to do a 5-year fix yet on the commercial side. And we've recently, gotten out of that loan for a way better rate. But so it was definitely a cool option to be able to get into the residential side, but we were paying a little bit higher interest rate than we would have liked to.
Awesome. Yeah. And so Jeff, he was asking, so can they lend to you if you intend to essentially set up an LLC, but you haven't set one up yet? So yeah, I'm assuming that he's asking if he were able to still secure the loan if he hasn't set up the LLC yet.
Well, technically in your most mortgage documents, it says that if you are to transfer the deed, that it's due on sale clause, I think it's called, so that you would have to pay the bank. If you go into the BiggerPockets forums, this is a hot debate where people say, I do this all the time and a bank has never called the loan on me because I keep paying it and they're not in the business of foreclosing properties. And then you'll hear stories of people who did it and the bank has said, your loan is due, you transferred the property. So I've never done that, so I'm not sure, but just something to watch out for. And I'd go into the forums and maybe read more on that. But technically, it says that you can't do that in your mortgage documents.
Sure. That makes sense. And I actually have a personal question myself related to property management. So, how I first started in investing, I actually was house hacking. I bought a fourplex and rent out the other 3 units. And initially, I was working full time in the software business, and I didn't really have time to manage. At least I didn't think I did. And so I kind of outsourced that to a property management firm. And they charged, I think, was it 10% plus, leasing fee costs and whatever else. And I just felt like there wasn't the same level of care that I was expecting. And so that was always something that was kind of irked me for a while. And after about a few months of this going on, obviously I got kind of frustrated with it. So I decided to transition away and start managing myself. Obviously, Cozy helped me out immensely, being able to manage everything for pretty much free. And obviously BiggerPockets and all the resources available on there was immensely helpful to get the lease contracts and, even advice on screening, because I was always scared about trying to source people from just Facebook or wherever else. And I just didn't know if I was going to be able to properly screen them. So my question is, now that, I kind of have a system myself on how to manage my own property, how did you, I guess, number one, manage that relationship with your property manager such that after this year time frame that you've had it, that you have a pretty good system in place? Like, I guess, what steps did you take from the start to now to kind of make sure that property manager was doing what they were expected to do?
Yeah, so this was the first so there was 2 40-unit apartment complexes. They actually gave us a bulk deal. If we paid 6%. So really great. And that was like the huge motivation as to like why we should do this. It was cheaper than hiring the girl that was working with me, and having a maintenance person, and just like the headache of it all, and then to throw in my properties. So the biggest thing at first was that they had never managed apartment complexes this large before. I think maybe like a 12 unit was their largest. So these were 2 40-unit apartment complexes, and they were not, and like they are very different animals when you're doing property management. Like these tenants have different needs, there's different wants, there's different things in place, like master locks and having the Knox box on the door, making sure that the firemen can get access to it, and just it's security cameras and everything. So it took a very long time to like have to talk to them and like take phone calls, text, emails, as to like answering their questions about the property. Like, hey, this person's CO detector is going off. Like, we think there's a gas leak. Okay, well, there's not even gas in the building. Like, it's got to be just the battery. Like, we have them in there, but there's literally no gas supplied to this building, and just things like that. Or where is this person's hot water tank supplied? It's not like a duplex or a single family that we're used to, where they're pretty much all in the basement. So that like took a long time and was very time consuming, just getting them used to the property and how it's different. And then the biggest thing was we transferred. They gave me a different property manager. So like maybe 4 months in, they gave me a new property manager because the other one was promoted. And so then it took adjusting to like her to get used to all the properties. And so now we pretty much only communicate through email. And it's just, she'll send me like on Thursdays, I get all of the leasing and for updates to me, like if there's any vacancies coming up, who's moving in, if there's any showings. And then just anything else that comes up, she just emails me and I respond by email. And we've definitely gotten better, like working with each other and trying not to overwhelm me with things, and like taking more like, I guess, advantage of like trying to figure it out herself before she messages me. But really it was more just getting used to how they do things. And I actually just had my like annual review meeting with them. And the one thing that I've had the most problem with is that like when an apartment comes vacant, they will wait till the person moves out until they start showing it. So like usually there's like a 2-week to 30-day window where that property is vacant for every turnover, where I was used to like somebody moves out, 2-day turnover, next person in, and like doing the showing. So what we did as a compromise was they're going to start in like, especially the apartment complexes, like most of the floor plans are pretty much the same. We use the same colors, we use the same flooring, like, and now with COVID, like they're doing virtual showings mostly anyways. So like, let's get those videos together. And as soon as someone gives their notice, let's get that uploaded. Let's get applications in. So I think if your property management is willing to listen to you and willing to take your suggestions and adjust and adapt to what you have to say, I think is a big question to ask up front, and make sure that they're willing to do that, and not just be like, oh, sorry, this is the way we do it, and that's it.
Okay. So a lot of it just has to do with the communication and just making sure that, I mean, there's give and take on both sides. Because that's great. That's great advice.
It's like at first, and then especially when COVID hit, I was like, this is great. Like, I feel like this huge weight off my shoulder. I don't have any tenants calling me. I'm not doing anything. I don't have to, respond to anybody. And this is great. And then like after a while, I'm like, wow, this is actually not as passive as I thought it was going to be. And so, yeah, it was very different.
That's awesome.
Ashely, you just got under contract, or you're under contract on your first out of state. Obviously, have a lot of things going on. I'm sure. What's next for you? I mean, you feel like you've tackled so much in a short amount of time. Or is there a goal that's after this next out of state, or what are you looking at internally or trying to improve?
Yeah, so my partner and I actually have 2 rehabs we're working on right now. So just getting those wrapped up and those rented out. And then we actually want to get another short-term rental out of state. We don't know where yet. We need to finish up this California one and then see where we want to do that. But one big thing for me this year is that I want to try and reach people, and with content, podcasts, social media, that don't even know about real estate investing. So this year will be a lot about the content and like trying to reach people, but I really want to reach people who don't even know like about this great thing that can be a part of their life. There's like BiggerPockets did a study where it showed like a huge majority of people on their platform are rookie investors who either haven't gotten a deal or have only gotten one deal. And like I want to reach out to those people too, but I want to bring people into the BiggerPockets network and be like, look at this community, like look what you could be doing. So that's a big focus for me right now, is trying to find those people and reach out to them, because real estate has changed my life incredibly, and I'd really like to help other people find it too and know that they can do it too.
That's incredible. I mean, joining these meetups, I'm sure you're going to help. I mean, you're helping people on this call. You're going to help people on other calls. Such a great way for you to build your brand. You got a good story. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we do attract a lot of newer investors as well, which is awesome, and again, it's been great to see the evolution from, we started, I think, early 2019 until now. I mean, the amount of people that have come in that have been brand new and we've seen them do their first deal. It's pretty awesome. So definitely. Paul, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, you got time for a question?
Yeah, we'll have time for, I think, one more if you'd like.
All right. Hey, Ashely, huge fan. Thanks for being here. I'm Paul, military rookie real estate investor. So this was perfect. I'm looking to invest out of state, possibly partner with my brother. So this is perfect. My question is, in your most recent Instagram post, you mentioned that one of the big misconceptions you had was that paying cash for investments was the only way to buy it. Obviously, we know that's not true. You've done seller financing, you've done commercial loans, traditional financing. My question is, with a lot of the out-of-state kind of investment properties, looking at duplexes specifically, lenders are saying 20, 25% down. Now, would you recommend getting the 10 kind of personal loans under my name first before looking for unconventional financing, or would you just kind of branch out right away?
Well, I guess that depends. Okay, so what are you looking to do when you purchase these out-of-state properties? Are you looking to BRRRR them? Are you looking for turnkey?
Yep. So right now, turnkey, looking primarily, like Rafael mentioned, one in Northwest Arkansas, and then a couple others in big military towns, big military training bases where people are going in and out for
Okay, and then
training, and then just doing short-term rentals there, Airbnb type stuff.
you want to do short term or long term on these?
So in the military towns, probably short-term,
Okay.
and then in other areas, just long-term. So kind of a mix of both.
Okay, so for the short-term rentals, you could actually buy them as a vacation home, so a second residence where you only have to put sometimes 10% down. So you just have to, I think you have to commit to so many days a year that you would go and stay there. And then you can short-term rental it out for, the rest of the time. So that's definitely something to look into because it's such a low entry fee and you're getting that great interest rate because it's, your residence, your home, not considered an investment property. And then I would also look at it. So do you have, if you were to go the conventional route and do 20% down payments, like do you have that cash where you could go and, keep growing and do these and with the down payment, like have that amount of money?
I think I'd be able to do probably 2 a year until my money runs out. But yeah.
Okay, so like if you went and did that and you did those, one thing you could look at is getting a commercial line of credit on your investment property, like especially if you're going to areas that have higher appreciation, and you can put these commercial lines of credit onto the property and then use that for the down payment on your next one. So we actually, before we built our house, we lived in an old farmhouse on our property and we turned that into a rental property and we went and got a line of credit on it, and that actually is how we fund most of our deals is through that line of credit. And a lot of times with a line of credit, the bank will lend you up to 95%, sometimes 85% of the loan to value of the property. So if you already put 20% down, the property has appreciated some, or you can show that it like has really great rental income, the cash flow, the appraisers will take that into consideration. So you could actually draw quite a nice little bit of money off of it from the line of credit too. And then just look for seller financing too. So that way you can go and do seller financing and they hold the mortgage for 6 months, a year, and that gives you time to go and use one of your 10 residential loans.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I didn't even think about the whole
money into it at all. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even think about the whole vacation home kind of second residence thing. So that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Ashely, I know we're running on time. Do you mind just expanding on that one a little bit
Right.
more? Is there a limit on, is it only your second residence or can you go up to 10 on Freddie?
Yeah, I don't know a ton about this, but I know that you can do more than one. It just can't be like, okay, I bought 3 in the same area. Like you could buy, one in, let's say Daytona Beach, Florida, and then another one in
Louisville,
Palm
Kentucky.
Springs or something, so that it's like you're getting different markets, not like or you can't like buy super close to your home either. So I'm not sure. I don't know the exact limitations. Like I don't even know how many days exactly do you have to technically occupy, and is it like an FHA where you only have to do it for a year, stuff like that. I'm not sure, but I do know people who have done that and they've gotten more than one property using that loan.
Gotcha. Thanks.
And that's a great question to ask your lenders. That's probably a great question to ask your lenders. Like if you have some relationships locally, just kind of ask. And I'm sure someone's going to know the answer to that. So
yeah.
All right. So we're running right around an hour. So I just wanted to thank you so much, Ashely, for stopping by and sharing all your insights with the group. Again, we really appreciate what you do, both on BiggerPockets and all your social media platforms. So really do appreciate that. So as far as, I guess, is people getting in contact with you, following what you do, can you kind of elaborate a little bit on that, kind of share how people can reach out or just, follow you on social media?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you guys so much for having me. So you can find me on the Real Estate Rookie Podcast for BiggerPockets. We have an episode out every Wednesday where we talk to a rookie investor, learn what they're doing, how they did it. And then once in a while, we have professionals on that tell us, when you're hiring a home inspector, what do you need to know? And then we just started releasing a new episode every Saturday called The Rookie Reply. And we're actually drawing Facebook questions from the Real Estate Rookie Facebook group and from Instagram. And Tony and I spend just, 10 minutes just basically getting straight to the point and answering that exact question. So those are new that come out on Saturdays. And then you can find me on Instagram at Wealth from Rentals.
Awesome. And we just got 6 of those 10-minute increments and won. So that's awesome. All right. Well, thanks so much again, Ashely, and thank you all for tuning in, especially those on Facebook. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
See you guys. Bye.